Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alaska College Fair. We have some great colleges with us tonight, but first, I just want to go over some housekeeping items. My name is Brianna, and I will be your facilitator tonight. Just as a reminder, your video and camera are off, so our panelists cannot see or hear you. Please utilize the Q&A function to ask any questions that you have throughout the presentation. This recording and all other recordings can be found at strivescan.com/Alaska. Now I'm going to pass it off to our wonderful panel.
Hello, everybody. Welcome in. I see some few quickly joining. So we will go ahead and start with our introductions. And we are talking about the college essay today, so we thought we would make it a little fun with our college introductions. And we are excited to hear each other's answers to this. But my name is Hillary Powell. I'm the Director of Recruitment at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington. We are Washington located tonight. And we thought we would share with you what our college essays were about. And so mine was like, what's something that makes you kind of like you or fuels you? And I talked about the power of music, and my whole essay was about the power of music in my life, which felt very philosophical when I was writing it. And now looking back, I realized actually didn't make like any sense whatsoever, but it really pulled at my own heart when I was writing the essay. So yes, the power of music sustained throughout my life. Robert.
All right, I guess my name's next on there. Hey everyone, my name's Robert Stolzberg. I'm an admissions counselor at Western Washington University, Republic University in Bellingham, Washington, which is the like very northwest corner of Washington State. So I live down here in Bellingham. I'm originally from Fairbanks, West Valley High School. If anyone out there is from Fairbanks, we may also be joined on camera today by my cat, Nora. She likes to hang out when we do these live events. So this is Nora. Everyone feel free to say hey in the chat. What did I write my college essay about? It was a very long time ago because I'm a very old person. But I do remember pretty specifically what that process was like. I wrote about how I was unlike other people because I was from Alaska, had grown up homeschooled and studied abroad in high school, but I focused rather than like on myself and what that meant to me. I focused it on how it made me different from other people because I thought that's what colleges were looking for. And so it was, I think, ostensibly an essay about like somewhat interesting things written in a really uninteresting and uninformative way. So I'm sure we're going to talk a lot today about what we do look for in a college essay. And it is not that. It is not what I wrote about, but that was what I thought we were looking for because I never went to any sort of event like this where they told us what they did want to see.
And hi, everyone. My name is Louise Carnes. I'm an Associate Director of Admission at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. We are in the southeast corner of Washington State. Another fun fact is that the three of us are actually all alums of the colleges that we're talking about today. So the admission essays that we wrote, these very essays, gained us admission to these colleges that are now such a big part of our lives. But anyways, my essay was about the book Moby Dick, which I thought would make me sound very smart. And in my I became an English major in college. Obviously, I was really excited about it. On my application, I said I wanted to be a biology major, and then wrote an essay about Moby Dick. That's like not a big deal. The Discord like doesn't really matter. But I know an admission officer was reading my essay, and they were like, like she's gonna be an English major for sure. What was so awful about, or what I regret the most about this essay was also that it was like not about me. It was almost only about Herman Melville's Moby Dick. So not a great, I mean, I'm sure I would still find it interesting if I read it today, but, or I'm sure as an admission officer, I would still be interested to read about like a fascinating book that's been researched so thoroughly for so many years. But yeah, at the same time, I wish I'd focused more on myself. And again, we want to say thanks so much for being here. We will start by talking a bit about the essay, the process of putting it together. We know some of you, if you're current seniors, may have already done this. So we'll also talk a little bit about how we read and review essays as well at our institutions. And if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We can touch base on them throughout, but we'll have plenty of time at the end. We're hoping to get through questions. We're a smaller group, so please keep them coming. We'd love to give you some more like personalized information here. And I'm going to start off just by sharing a little bit about the purpose of the college essay really quickly. I think in essence, the college essay exists so that we can learn more about you. It takes many different forms, which we'll get into in just a couple of moments, but really no matter whether the essay is for, multiple colleges, you're planning on sending it to all your common application schools or use it for many applications. We'll talk about kind of caveats to that as well. Or whether it is an essay for a special audition, a special program within a school. It's more than just like the writing conventions. We really want to hear more about your candidacy. So focusing the essay on something like passionate and central to who you're passionate about, central to who you are. Is a great place to start. That's kind of one thing that we're looking for, to learn something about you that is not as easily determined from your transcript, GPA, all these other pieces of information that are kind of set by the time you're applying to colleges. The purpose of the college essay is also to address your fit for a given school or a program within a school. This doesn't always mean mentioning the school specifically. We'll talk about that, but doing your research and understanding what you want out of the college process and applying to schools that you'd be really happy at. We'll take care of a lot of this for you, but we are reading essays thinking about more so than who you just are in the classroom, like who you would be on our campuses. We all have really community-based programs on our campuses. So we're thinking about you as a roommate and a member of a club, not just as someone in a classroom. That's something really important that the essay can give us context on. We do use it to determine writing capabilities. So it's important that this essay be a polished piece of writing that you've proofread several times. It should be free of distracting errors and typos. We want to make sure that you'll be successful on our campuses, of course, which all will have substantial writing components to most of the coursework. But I think that having the essay proofread and just thinking through it, working hard, should definitely address a lot of these concerns you might have, about admission officers being too hard on your writing style. Don't overthink it and try to elevate the essay too much. And then a couple of kinds of essays that we will delve in further to throughout this session that we wanted to list. They have different purposes. There's this personal essay or personal statement. It is broad and can be sent to many or several schools, as I said before, to share more about your general candidacy and kind of your voice more broadly. There are also supplemental essays, which are typically specific to a school and sometimes even programs within a school. With that, I'm going to hand things off to Hillary, and she'll share more about what a personal essay is so that you can get an idea.
Yes. So the personal essay, right? The broad subject, real big tips and tricks, Common App, Coalition App, that essay is getting sent to every school that you're applying to. So if you say that one of our schools is your dream school within a Common App application, I'm going to see that Western or Whitman or PLU is your dream school, right? Because it's getting sent to everybody. So make sure that you're keeping it as broad as possible. Choose that topic that's good for you. Like Louise was saying, I always kind of think about it as a 90-10 rule. There are some prompts that are asking you to talk about something else. 10% of that should be talking about that something else. And then 90% should be talking about you and how that relates to you, right? So kind of like Robert's example, it should have been brought back to who Robert was, right? Not about everybody else, because the essay is the chance to get to know you as an applicant. So choose the essay prompt that's most natural for you to write on. Don't feel like you have to choose the one that you think we want to read. We just want to read the one that's most natural for you to write on. Keep it focused on yourself. Like I said, don't mention that specific school within it, because that really does kind of deter, not necessarily like an admission decision, but definitely like oh, okay, well, maybe they're not as interested in my school. And what can I maybe do to help them see themselves at my school as well? That's part of our roles as admission counselors, is to help you see yourself at the institutions we work at. So the personal essay is the most daunting because it's really the only part of the application you have control over. So take that time, answer the prompt that's good for you. Make sure that 90% of the essay is about you, not somebody else. And then also make sure to keep it clean of any specific school that you're thinking about applying to. So those are kind of the big three. And I'll hand it off to Robert.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. Okay, so I'm going to touch on the supplemental essays because Western has a couple of those. And so to this first point of pay attention to a college's requirements, yeah, not everywhere requires supplemental essays. Western doesn't even require supplemental essays. There are a couple of optional ones, and many schools are going to have ones that are optional, but definitely make sure you're doing your due diligence. It's kind of the last thing you want is to think you've submitted a complete application to your dream school, only to find out after the application deadline that Dartmouth had a additional supplemental essay that you really could have knocked out of the park, but you didn't write it. So that really holds true for a lot of parts of the application process, and that's definitely going to hold true for things that we talk about here today, because even between our three institutions, we aren't all looking for quite the exact same things, as I'm sure is going to come up and we're going to elaborate on. But make sure you know the specific rules for the specific schools that you're applying to. If you aren't sure where to find those rules or where to find those requirements, reach out directly and ask. Western and PLU and Whitman and all of the other schools that you all are interested in have people like us whose job it is to answer those questions for you and make sure that you're informed. So if you're not sure, ask. Kind of the only problem we can't solve in that regard is moving back time because you missed a deadline. Read through the prompts very carefully. Supplemental essays are really different from those main essays that we touched on earlier, in that they are usually for a pretty specific purpose. Any of you who have come to any of my virtual events or who saw me up in Alaska probably heard me say you can write your college essay about anything you want to if you do it right. And that definitely holds true for those, the big main general essays. Again, your mileage may vary a little bit based on the school, but the supplemental essays are really for a specific purpose. So one of the two ones that Western has, I have over here on my other screen, just going to read it. It's a very short one-sentence prompt. Describe any activities you have been involved in related to diversity or multiculturalism in your community. That's for one of our scholarship programs. And I would say probably over half of the essays that I read for that one completely leave out the in your community part of the prompt and really don't even answer what we're looking for. So read it again. Every single word in one of these prompts is there for a reason, not to make it sound too highfalutin or intimidating. We're just looking for something kind of specific when we have these. And then, yeah, to that last point, it's okay and encouraged to mention a specific school or program within the school in contrast to that main essay that's going to be going out to a bunch of different schools. If you're doing a Common App or coalition or like copy paste kind of situation, we know that you're writing this one pretty specifically for us. Or if you're not writing it specifically for us, you can act like you are. But yeah, since this is a little more specific, a little more focused, not a bad idea. And, depending on the school and depending on the prompt, it can also really help you stand out in showing that like you've put some research in and you know a thing or two about the school that you're interested in. If you talk up one of us because of a specific program that you're into or something about the location that we're in or some sort of community or student life aspect that you know about our school, that can kind of, get some gears moving on our end as well. This is, someone who's specifically interested in coming here and has taken the time out of their busy schedule to learn such. So yeah, make sure you understand the rules, make sure you're reading and actually answering all parts of the prompt, because by nature, these are looking for something fairly specific. And yeah, as it's something fairly specific, feel free to shout us out by name if relevant.
Awesome. We thought this might be a good time to kind of talk about what each of us I would say broadly are looking for in essay, which is harkening back to the beginning of the presentation, like we're looking to get to know you better, really, first and foremost, but we all have slightly different essay requirements and ways that we review. Yeah, we treat the essays slightly differently in the committee process. Yeah, we'll start with Hillary and talk through all of our essays and kind of which programs do or do not require them in our schools, how we read through.
Yeah. So for PLU, you can choose whatever one on the Common App that suits you best. So again, trust that gut, right to the one that you want. But I would say, like in our review process, we're definitely looking for consistency. And I would say probably within the last 2 years, I've started to see some real inconsistencies between what is within the general common application and then how your essay is written. So when we're talking about like keeping things like grammatically, even I can't say it, grammatically correct throughout your essay and throughout the process, that does include also like your name, your parents' names, your activities. Because I've seen a lot where there should be capitalization, there should be things that are titles, so they should have, you know, a capital T, not a lowercase t. And then we get to the essay and it's like a totally different student. So it also makes me wonder, okay, how much time did you take on your or the rest of your application that is as vitally important, because all of us are holistic admission institutions where we're looking at your whole application. So that's one that I'm always kind of on the lookout for, and that we're on the lookout for, is how did students take the time to fill out their application. Another big one is that we have both a pretty competitive nursing program at PLU, and there is an additional application for that. That should be where you're writing your nursing essay. So kind of like Robert was talking about the supplements, that's where you should be talking about why you want to be a nurse, not necessarily in your general essay. And then same for our presidential scholarship process. That one does have a different application essay that is around diversity and justice and sustainability and how you see that within your life. And I would say there are times where you don't know how you see that in your life, right? Like you might not know how you see diversity and multicultural in your community, but it doesn't have to be a perfect answer. It just has to be where you're at now. And one of the biggest pitfalls I see in those questions is not fully answering the prompt and or feeling like you have to make something up to be able to answer the question. And honesty will go way further for you in the process than trying to clearly make something up in the process. So for us, that's really kind of what we're looking for, is that there's just consistency within your application. And the essay is a really big way that we can kind of judge that. But if you like miss one period or like misspell one word, you know, we're not going to deny you admission from PLU. But it definitely is, we want to see that you took the time. It's a big deal. You're also potentially applying for a lot of money in that same application. So we want you to take the time to be able to do that.
All right, and so touching on what that looks like at Western in terms of policies, we are not on the Common App. We are on the Coalition app, which is new this year for us. And you can also just apply directly through our website. So depending if you apply directly on the main website, Western application, which I would say about 80% of students have been doing this year, because us being on the Coalition is new, you're going to see one set of essay prompts that are Western specific and are fairly broad. And then if you apply on the Coalition application, it'll be a slightly different set of prompts. But really, if you apply on the Western application, the most popular essay prompt is the one that says topic of your choice. If you've written another essay that captures what you want the admissions committee to know about you, feel free to share it here. So as I tell students when I see them in person, as anyone who's maybe met with me before has probably already heard, there's two big things that I'm going to be looking for in your essay, right? If I sit here and tell you you can write your college essay about whatever you want, that's pretty unhelpful advice if I don't tell you what you should write it about. So the two biggest things that I'm looking for is one, you've already heard it, make it personal. We want it to be about you. No creative nonfiction, no research papers, please, no research papers. You should ostensibly be the protagonist of your college essay, at least for what we're looking for at Western. So make it about yourself, even if it's about your favorite book or your favorite movie or your pet, bring that back around to you because you're the one that we want to get to know. Make it personal, step one. Step two is we are going to be looking for evidence in your essay that you are going to be successful at Western. This whole rigmarole of essays and grades and transcripts and recommendations, we ask for these things because we are trying to the best of our abilities to have students come to our campuses who are going to be successful here. And that could be academic success as like an involved member of a community, success in the sense of like using your undergraduate years as the first step towards a career that you're going after. Could be something totally different, but we want to know in your essay how it is you're going to be successful, because that's what we're looking for in students. So regardless of if you write it about your pet or being a state champion athlete or something academic, as long as you're step one, making it personal, and step two, addressing how you will be successful at Western, that's about 90% of what I'm looking for when I review a student's essay. Kind of only other policy thing is we're looking for about 500 words, not strict on it, not as long as most of what you write for school. That's about a page, single spaced. If you're at like 450 or 550, don't sweat it. I did read an essay today that was about 4 times as long as what we look for. And that was, you know, again, not something that you're going to be denied for, but it sort of makes a part of a larger picture of if the essay is 4 times as long as what we ask for and the capitalization is really bad and you put the name of the wrong school in the essay, those little things can add up in like a sense of not demonstrating great attention to detail. And that can end up having an impact on an application. So about 500 words, tell us about yourself, tell us how you're going to be successful. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would definitely second in a way like what both Hillary and Robert have said. Whitman also practices a holistic review process. We are exclusively a common application school and we do not have a supplement. So the only writing sample that we'll get past just your little rundown of extracurriculars, and there's opportunities on the common application on all these applications to explain anything like any context that you'd like to share for your transcript, switches in schools. That's not what your essay is for. It is, yeah, a piece of writing that's like by you, about you. At Whitman, 2 admission officers at least will read your essay, and potentially it will go to an admission committee, your entire application will, and everybody will look at your essay. So don't worry about picking like a prompt that you're like, oh my gosh, what if my admission officer hates this? Other people will read that same essay, right? Maybe you wrote about birds and your admission officer is afraid of birds. That's, I guess, a possibility. Some people are, but don't think too much about that when you're picking a topic, right? Because eventually, like ultimately, we can all check our biases when we're reading applications, but more than one people will look into it. That being said, at Whitman, I think that all admission officers, regardless of their own like interests and hobbies and passions, are looking for evidence that you would be not just a good student, as I said earlier, on campus, but a good member of the campus community. That doesn't mean that you need to detail or go like further into your involvement, which you'll have other places on the application to list, but just sharing a little bit about like what makes you excited, something that makes you excited, and share your voice, which you'll be contributing in so many different venues on campus. I think we see it as like a really important piece that is not, it's separate from your transcript, separate from your extracurriculars, any other kind of predetermined piece of information. We wanted to add another dimension to the application. And we do spend a long time kind of like, it's hard to not frame a student through what they write their essay about, because you have so much control over that topic. That doesn't mean that it should put too much pressure on you. As long as you chose a topic that you're really excited about, we will enjoy the process of reading it. You can kind of just tell when an essay is like really true to who a student is. Yeah, so we're looking to kind of round out our holistic review, in addition to making sure that yeah, your writing is sound and that you'd be able to be successful in a college curriculum, as or Robert was talking about essays and applications that go over the common application, and I would assume the coalition. You cannot go over the word limit. Do not copy and paste your essay in without reading it very carefully and making sure that the last sentence or the last word or the last paragraph is getting cut off. The common application essay can only be 650 words. So do watch out for that when you're applying to any Common Application school. And yes, even if you've read it 1,000 times in the Google document or Word document that you wrote it in, read it again when you paste it into Common Application. That's a general tip. That's not something specifically that Whitman's looking for. Every college is looking for a complete essay. All right. And now, okay, first of all, I want issue another reminder about the question box. Please keep them coming. We're going to devolve further into just kind of our general tips for this essay. If you haven't written it, if you've already written it, don't overthink things. Just think about these as like other like positive ways that your essays will be like reviewed, things that we're thinking about, and also take it all with a grain of salt. This is a really difficult environment, like this 650-word essay in the case of the personal essay, and really any supplement, which is even shorter. It's really difficult to fit yourself into this piece of writing. So yeah, don't feel too much stress. Again, as we say more and more things, there's so many great essays out there. Oh, and I guess on that topic, I'll start off with my tip, which is don't get distracted by other essays. If you read this essay online that you thought was just so great, you're not going to write it. It's already out there. It already exists. You should go back to the drawing board for your own essay. I remember reading this amazing essay that a student from my high school wrote the year before me. She got into her dream school. I was like, I want my essay to be like that. It's not helpful to think of your essay as being like another one, right? Because we want it to be, first of all, an original piece of writing, but I know none of you would ever like copy an actual essay over, but still copying kind of an idea over, that isn't in your best interest. It's not going to feel super organic to write. And you don't want to kind of fit yourself into this template that doesn't make sense. It's really hard to like convey a sense of humor in these essays also in some ways. So like if starting the essay off with like a goofy opening line or like a fun joke to like entice an admission officer in because you heard that it worked really well for someone else, we have to read every word of the essays no matter what. We're not just like looking for like the one that catches our attention. So yeah, don't get distracted by the idea of like formulating your essay a certain way or an essay that you think went so well for someone else. Yeah, kind of start by being as original as you can be.
Yeah, I like to think about them as like creative writing projects versus research writing projects. So we are really asking you to kind of throw that like intro, 3 supporting, conclusion, kind of breakdown of essays against the wall, because we want it again to be like telling a story. Give us like the 5 senses that come along with the experience that you're trying to bring into play, because that just makes it more true to your experience and also just way more interesting like to read. And then it does allow you to reuse an essay that you really liked on the Common App and on the like Westerns app, but be really specific about the ones that you're copying over, right? It should be about you. I've had a few times where a student has provided me what I would consider not an essay, but a writing sample. And that was a copy and paste like history paper that they plugged in, which doesn't tell me anything about the student. And also doesn't give me the background of like the work that they've done within their class. Like I can't appreciate that essay as well as their teacher can, knowing that whole journey of the student in the school. So really encourage you all to at least try to create a new essay for this. Or if it's a self-reflection one that you've already done in a class, that would be more appropriate than like a research project.
Oh, hey, sorry, that's me. I was looking at my notes. Don't be the only person to read your essay. This is good advice for lots of types of writing, and this is one of them. First off, for just the kind of small but important details of like spelling, grammar, comma splices, does it make sense, right? It's really helpful to have somebody else's eyes on it, especially if it's something that you've been staring at for days or weeks. And just sort of like lose the ability to notice things about it. But also I think it's really important to have somebody else look over it, because the things that make sense in our heads aren't always the things that make sense on paper. And it can be really hard for you as the person whose head it has come from to be able to identify that. Maybe it's like something structural in the essay that like format wise doesn't make sense. It might even be, if you're writing about something you're passionate about, like building computers or photography or poetry, you might be using a bunch of jargon that's not going to make sense to the, people on the other end of your essay, the higher ed professionals who don't necessarily know what a different parts of the computer are called, or it might just like not make sense. I think probably about 80% of what goes on in my head doesn't make sense on paper. So I think it's fair to think that that may be the case for other folks as well. So I know, a lot of students will write their essays about things that are pretty personal, or like might even feature potentially your parents in not the best light. Shout out to any parents who are here. That might be, something embarrassing that happened to you. So like if you're not comfortable having your like mom or dad read it, maybe you have a sibling or a friend or an English teacher, you can send it to me and I'd be happy to take a look at it. Just don't do it like 2 weeks before the application deadline. Do it a little further out than then. So, certainly pick and choose who you're comfortable sharing that sort of writing with, and don't feel like this piece of advice from me should pressure you into letting someone who don't want read it. But yeah, don't hit submit if you're the only one who has read your essay, because it's really easy to miss stuff and it can be really hard as the person who wrote it to catch what it is that you're missing.
I would also say, going off of Robert's point, a really good trick is to read your essay aloud, because oftentimes kind of like what makes sense in our brain, right, doesn't maybe make sense out loud. But also when we're rereading a piece so many times, our brain just skips over the mistakes because it knows what you want to say. So reading it aloud is a really great trick to be able to make sure that your sentence makes sense. And sometimes it allows you to catch things that maybe you've looked over 10 times, but just didn't catch until you said it out loud. Awesome. Okay, I think that's our last slide of tips. Our next slide that we can keep up is our contact information, but we would love to know, hopefully we've inspired some questions for you, and be able to put them into the Q&A here.
Anyone who shares questions in the Q&A, I will give my cat a pet personally from you.
Don't be afraid.
We're here. This is your
yes,
people
here for you. I guess in the meantime, while people are collecting thoughts, I think it was Robert who had the idea to talk about a memorable essay, not the ones that we wrote, but of ones that we have read. And I'm trying to think, this is maybe undercutting some of my advice about like, don't read or write your essay based on another college admission essay. But I would say like there's definitely some unexpected kind of takes on the prompts and topics that I feel like would have kind of broadened my understanding of what this essay could be about. When I approached the process of writing it, one of my most memorable essays that I have read, memorable in a good way, I should say, was on a girl who left. She'd been keeping a journal for years and years, and then left it on a bus. So it was like a very it was a sad experience. It was also it was like kind of a just mundane experience. Is obviously like big within her life, but it wasn't about a major research accolade or like a statement of purpose about wanting to change the world. It was just about like the process of reflection that she put into the journal, and then kind of having to be okay with just having benefited from it while she was writing it and not having it kind of long term. So bittersweet, but she was an exceptional, really accomplished student, right? But there are other places to share accomplishments on the application. It was really nice to read about this more personal experience. I remember it really fondly, and yeah, it really sticks with me.
That's really great. I have a favorite one of mine from last year's. One of my students from Oregon was a musician in a mariachi band, and how they started out was they would go on Mother's Day, they would go and play a traditional song at all the moms in their community. This student of Mexican background, and it's like really early in the morning they would go and play for all the moms. And then one year they decided, well, let's go and play for all the non-Mexican moms who like don't have this cultural tradition. And the student wrote about being really nervous about it and being worried that People who didn't have the like shared cultural knowledge that she did would be upset by loud music early in the morning. And then all of the non-Mexican moms who'd never experienced that before absolutely loved it. And it ended up being a like really positive experience for everyone involved. And that really stood out for a couple reasons. One, to the two tips that I always give, was it personal? Yes, it was very personal. It was an experience that happened to this student, and she wrote about not just what happened, but how she felt at the time and leading up to it and after the fact. So we got to know her in a meaningful way. And did it demonstrate how she was going to be successful in college? Well, she didn't sit down and say, and I will be successful at Western because X, Y, Z. And that's super not what we're looking for. But it was, for the student, it was a story about her stepping outside of her comfort zone, feeling nervous and unsure about doing something, doing it anyway, and seeing the positive impact that it had. And so that's absolutely the sort of experience and the sort of skill set that is going to come in handy when you're in college. You're at some point going to be faced with the opportunity to do something that scares you. And this was a student who was able to show us in a really meaningful and unique way that she had already done that and was prepared to do that in college. And this wasn't a student who was trying to, be a music major or anything like that. So, like we've said, doesn't directly have to be related to the academic thing that you're doing. Is a really powerful vehicle to tell a story. And the student ended up getting admitted and also got a pretty sizable scholarship through the application process as well, in large part based on that essay.
One that stuck with me, which I think now probably has been like 6 or 7 years. So this person is now like graduated from college, is that they started by talking about bark on a playground, which I was like, what are we talking about? And then brought it to essentially her relationship with her brother and how that relationship has really shaped her, and how the memory of playing on a playground in the bark with her brother is like at the core of like her relationship with him. And so I just thought it was a really interesting way to open it, and it caught me, right? Like it got me interested because I know that smell, I know that feel. I've been on a playground, right? If you've grown up in the Northwest or Alaska or somewhere, you've been on like a muddy playground at some point. And so I really just liked that visual that she created. And yeah, definitely has stuck with me for a very long time now.
So as we're waiting for the flood of questions that's about to come in, I do have a question for the two of you. I'm interested in the answer to. So we just heard some pretty good examples of unique and strong and well-written essays. Are there essay topics that you tend to see a lot of? And for the students out there who think they might want to write about that sort of experience, how do you, as the student writing the essay, approach putting the best version of that kind of essay out? Like if you're writing about something that you think like, oh, I'm probably not the first person to write about XYZ, how do you make the best version of that essay, and how do you really own it and make it yours?
I feel like I have two, which maybe will steal Louise's, so she might just like affirm what I'm saying or agree or have different things. Probably the most common one has to deal with sports and sports injuries, sports moments. I'm not discounting those moments as being very pivotal parts of the high school experience, but they are also very pivotal parts of the high school experience for hundreds of students. So the ones that I think kind of break out of the mold when talking about their athletic accomplishments or injuries or things that are happening are again those that are bringing it back to itself. So I don't really want to know about the play, right? Like I don't want to know about like what that specific game was all about. I want to know about your personal experience within it. So making sure that you're not telling me anything broad within that, and also recognizing that you might be the 15th essay I read about sports that day, right? So like it's a pretty common essay topic. So I always tell students if they can choose a different topic to maybe do that, because there must be something else in their life that also is important to them. The other one is like service or mission trips. So again, don't tell us a weak overview of what happened in that trip. Tell us about like one specific moment and how that then impacted you, right? So those are things that I think I see kind of a lot of what I would consider as like the pitfalls, is the service trips and the athletic side. Yeah.
Absolutely. Essays like on really commonly used topics can still like give a lot of insight onto who you are as a person and show that you'd be like a great fit for our institutions. One of the ones that I read a lot is being a camp counselor, which is such a wonderful thing. And there are so many camp counselors on Whitman's campus, and they are like, it's an outdoorsy school, like both of PLU and Western as well. Like there's a lot of people who have really meaningful connections to the outdoors and outdoor leadership, and we literally love to hear about it. But I would say, rather than talking about like the same, I think I've read some essays about sports injuries and like sports, kind of like the arcs of games that have kind of taken so long to like build up to the part where that it's about you, that it doesn't feel so personal anymore. And that's like where it's really in danger of like blending in with other ones. Not that, you know, like we are all like carefully reviewing these, all the essays will inevitably be unique, but focusing on your own feelings, like reactions to something, and your own story, rather than like kind of building up to this one experience that you had by explaining a sport, explaining a play, explaining an ACL injury. I'm very familiar now through these essays with ACL injuries, right? And I've read some that get very technical and really like a lot of exposition on something that, though it obviously impacted you and you're still unpacking that, it doesn't really kind of land on, you know, how you felt about it until the end. Yeah, so that's what I would say in distinguishing these essays. There's really no bad topic, and that's not a bad way of going about things. You're still showing something that's important to you, something that you've overcome, your writing style, but I think there is a way to make it a little more focused on you and get to that a little bit sooner. The essay, even the 650 words of the Common Application, like those words, like you can use them up pretty quickly. Yeah, so don't take too much time with any background, because that's not going to be as focused on who you are. Essays about cool family members and like family lore and stories can also be excellent and really, really fascinating. But again, the person that we are admitting is you, not an impressive like kind of grandparent or parent. It sounded like the essay that Hillary mentioned about a student and their brother was like a great example of how you can write about a relationship and share a ton about yourself. Yeah, and still paint a really like compelling picture.
We do have about 3 minutes left, so this is your chance to get any last minute questions in the Q&A. But as we said before, feel free to email us. This information is for you to use. We are all the reps for Alaska, and so if you want to send us any questions, we are happy to help. We love Alaska. We were bummed we didn't get to go to the whole state this year. Hopefully next year.
Yeah, yes, if you're sophomores and juniors, as you know, this will be recorded. So revisiting it when you're actually choosing a topic or kind of looking for some guidance. Yeah, like I would love to be a resource next year as well. And yeah, have topics or have students bounce topics off me. That's always a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, I hope that all of you students on the line really know how lucky you are for getting all this knowledge today. It was really great information, and you should really take it to heart when you're writing your essay. Colleges really just want to get to know you. That's all it comes down to. And this is your chance. So if they take away anything, just know that they really want to get to know who you are as a person. But thank you for our college reps for joining us. It was really an awesome presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I hope all of our students enjoyed it too. Once you exit this Zoom, there will be a very short 5-question survey. We'd really appreciate it if you could fill that out. And this recording and all the recordings, oh, there's a cat, will be, sorry, at strivescan.com/Alaska. All right, well, have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thank you all so much.